Hello, and welcome to another vlog. This weekend was Canadian Thanksgiving. I got to enjoy a delicious turkey dinner with my family, and now we have a lot of leftovers. What's your favorite Thanksgiving food? Please let me know down in the comments. Anyway, this week's theme is human rights. Human rights are very important to me because as a person with a disability, I have experienced discrimination firsthand, and I've seen what happens when people's human rights are violated. And not only has this been very eye-opening for me, but it's also inspired me to become a human rights advocate and to fight for the rights of everyone, not just people with disabilities. To be honest, I tend to get very upset and very frustrated when I see people being mistreated because I've experienced that and I know what it feels like. At the end of the day, regardless of our differences, we are all the same species, so why can't we just get along? Now, today I want to spend a little bit of time talking about some ongoing human rights movements, who they represent, and what they're fighting for. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the feminist movement, Black Lives Matter, the LGBTQ movement, and also the disability rights movement. So the first movement I want to talk about is the feminist movement. Now, the feminist movement's main goal is to create gender equality. And because of that, the group that they represent is primarily women. Now, they want to do this in a number of ways. One of the big things they want to do is they want to end violence against women, including sexual violence, which can be a very big problem in certain parts of the world, even here in Canada and the States sometimes. And they also want to end discrimination against women, which takes on a variety of forms. So they want to close the gender wage gap, and they want to improve reproductive rights for women. And of course, they also want to eliminate outdated gender stereotypes, which can cause a lot of problems for women who are really trying to become successful and start a career and things like that. There tends to be this misconception that a woman's role should be in the home and that her primary role is to raise a family, but that's something that the feminist movement is really trying to change. And of course, they also want better representation for women, not only in government, but also in the media. Now, a major part of the feminist movement right now is the ongoing Me Too movement, the purpose of which is to end sexual harassment and sexual assault of women. Um, so that's just a brief overview of what the feminist movement is really trying to do. Next, there's Black Lives Matter. Now, as the name suggests, Black Lives Matter is primarily representing the African Canadian and African American community. So their main goal is to create racial equality. And again, they want to end violence and hatred against not just the black community, but all visible minorities, including the violence at hands of law enforcement. Now, obviously, the vast majority of law enforcement are decent human beings, but the fact that police brutality exists at all is itself a problem, and that has in a lot of ways inspired the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement. Um, and of course, just like with the feminist movement, Black Lives Matter wants to end systematic discrimination against visible minorities. That means eliminating income inequality, which is an issue that many people within those communities do face, and of course getting rid of outdated racial stereotypes, which can cause a lot of problems for people within these communities. And again, they want better representation of visible minorities, not just in the government, but also in media. And then that brings me to the next, which is the LGBTQ2SIA movement. Now, that is a very long acronym that stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, two-spirit, intersex, and asexual. Um, and there are a number of different acronyms describing that community, but that's the one that I chose because I think that it's the most descriptive of the movement for my purposes. But for the rest of the video, I'll probably just refer to it as the LGBTQ community just to save time. So the LGBTQ movement is primarily fighting for gay rights and transgender rights, because that's the community that they're representing is the LGBTQ community. And again, they want to end hatred of these communities. So they want to end homophobia and biphobia and transphobia and all other forms of prejudice against the LGBTQ community, and any violence that comes along with that. you're probably seeing a little bit of a pattern here. And again, they want to end discrimination against the LGBTQ community. So that means fighting for marriage equality and better recognition of all gender identities. Many people within the LGBTQ community would like to see the government recognize a third gender on government documentation, for those who don't necessarily conform to the binary model of genders, because gender is something that is very fluid. And they also want to have better access to sexual health care, which is an area that is often lacking for people within the LGBTQ community. And again, just like with the feminist movement and Black Lives Matter, they want better representation of the LGBTQ community in government and in the media. And then finally, there's the disability rights movement. Now, this is the movement that I can really speak the most about because I am a member of this community, and this is the main community that I support in my fight for human rights. So, the disability rights movement is primarily representing the disabled community. And because of that, our goal is to create accessibility and inclusion for all, not just within the built environment, but accessibility in all areas. So we're talking, the built environment in education and employment, transportation, communication, and access to goods and services, including healthcare. That's what we mean when we say that we want to make the world more accessible. We want to make everything more accessible and easier to access for people with disabilities. And really everyone, because accessibility does benefit everyone, because anyone could become disabled at any time. And a big part of it is ending violence against people with disabilities. People with disabilities are 1.5 times more likely to be abused than able-bodied individuals. And that statistic goes up if they're for children and women with disabilities. We also want to end the social, economic, and political oppression of people with disabilities. So that means eliminating income inequality. A lot of people in the disabled community live below the poverty line because they can't find employment because of all the challenges related to that. There's a stigma around hiring people with disabilities. We want to get rid of a lot of those disability stereotypes and misconceptions that really make our lives difficult. And we want to try and change society so that they will include us in the community a lot more, because that's something that a lot of times people with disabilities are excluded from the community, even more than a lot of other minorities. And then, of course, we want better representation of people with disabilities in the government and in the media, just like the previous 3 movements that I spoke about. Right, so as you can see, each of these movements, the feminist movement, Black Lives Matter, the LGBTQ movement, and the disability rights movement, are all working to improve human rights for the groups that they represent. And you've probably noticed that there's a lot of overlap between their causes. That's because of something called intersectionality, which is this belief that different social identities overlap, and that contributes to discrimination. And understanding that is key to improving human rights. Now, unfortunately, there are those who are suspicious of some of these movements because they think that they're trying to infringe upon the rights of others. So, for example, they might think that the feminist movement is trying to infringe upon the rights of men, when in fact, it's just trying to improve the rights of women. And some people might also believe that Black Lives Matter is trying to infringe upon the rights of white people, when in fact it's just trying to end systematic discrimination against the Black community and against visible minorities. So it's unfortunate that people think that. Some people think that, but I think the best tool that we have to prevent that is to educate people about what these causes are, what they're fighting for, and why they're important, and then maybe we can eliminate some of those underlying biases that they have. So on Thursday, I'll be releasing a video in which I talk more about what human rights is, what its purpose is, and why it's important. So subscribe if you want to see that video. And also be sure to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you enjoyed today's video and you want to help me make more videos like this one, then please support me on Patreon. Anyway, thanks for watching, and see you on Thursday.